It was the morning of my 68th wedding anniversary, and my son was standing in my kitchen, making coffee he'd never once offered to make before. That should have told me everything. My name is Franklin Dodd, if we're being formal, though nobody's called me that since the Navy. 68 years old. Retired electrician. Widower going on 3 years now, since Carol passed from the pancreatic cancer that took her faster than either of us were ready for. We had 41 years together. 41 years of early mornings and burnt toast, and a woman who laughed too loud at her own jokes and made the whole house feel alive. After she was gone, the house just felt like square footage. My son, I'll call him my son because that's what he is, or what I thought he was. His name is Lyle. 36 years old, married to a woman named Sheila who smiles the way a realtor smiles. You know the kind. All teeth, no warmth. They have 2 kids I barely see in a house in Scottsdale that costs more than they can afford. Which I know because Lyle has told me, repeatedly, in the specific way people tell you things when they're building a case. The coffee thing wasn't new. What was new was that Sheila had suggested the anniversary dinner. Carol's and my anniversary, or what would have been our anniversary, falls on the 3rd Saturday of March. I hadn't celebrated it since Carol died. Hadn't seen the point. But Sheila called 2 weeks before and said she thought it would be meaningful. A way to honor Carol's memory. She said she'd cook at their place. She said she wanted the kids to hear stories about their grandmother. I said yes, because I'm a fool who wanted to believe his family meant well. The morning of, Lyle showed up at my house in Phoenix. I'm on the west side, a neighborhood called Maryvale that people have been saying is up and coming since 1987, and he made coffee and stood in my kitchen and talked about nothing. Sports, weather, a TV show I don't watch. He was performing relaxation and performing it badly. His leg was bouncing under the table the whole time. He kept checking his phone and flipping it face down. I'm 68, not blind. You seem jumpy, I said. I'm fine, Dad. I'm just tired. The kids were up late. He poured me a second cup I hadn't asked for. Shayla's already at the house getting everything set up, he said. We should head over around 5. Gives her time to finish cooking. It's 10 in the morning, Lyle. I know. I just thought I'd come keep you company. We don't spend enough time together. In 36 years of his life, Lyle has never once said, we don't spend enough time together. The last time he came to my house without an agenda was to borrow my truck. Before that, to ask for money. I said I appreciated it. I poured out the coffee he'd made because it tasted wrong. Too strong, like he'd never watched me make it once in his life. And I made my own, and I sat at Carol's kitchen table and I listened to my son talk about nothing while I watched the clock on the microwave and thought about the way Sheila had said the word meaningful on the phone. She'd lingered on it. meaningful, the way you say a word when you've practiced it. Around noon I told Lyle I needed to rest before dinner. Old man nap. He laughed too quickly and said of course he'd see me at 5. He left. I watched his car back out of the driveway from behind the curtain. Then I picked up the phone and called my attorney. Her name is Beverly Chu. She's been handling my affairs since Carol got sick and we needed to get our paperwork in order. Wills, beneficiary designations, property titles. She is 71 years old, sharp as a carpet tack, and charges $300 an hour, which I have paid happily every time because Beverly Chu has never once looked at me like I'm a problem to be managed. I asked Beverly to meet me. She said she had a gap at 2 o'clock. I drove to her office in Tempe and sat across from her desk and told her what I was feeling and why. She listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I pay for and one of the things I appreciate. When I was finished, she folded her hands and said, "Tell me about the durable power of attorney." There it was. 2 years ago, when I'd had a health scare, turned out to be nothing, an irregular heartbeat that got medicated and settled down. I had signed a durable power of attorney at Lyle's insistence. He'd framed it as responsible planning. He'd brought me to a notary he knew, a man named Donovan who worked out of an office supply store in Chandler. The document named Lyle as my agent for financial and healthcare decisions in the event of my incapacitation. I had not read it as carefully as I should have. Beverly had been asking me about it for 2 years. I had told her it was fine. It was just a precaution. Lyle was a good kid. I had said this enough times that I'd almost believed it. "Pull it," I said. "Whatever it says, I want it pulled." Beverly typed something. "You can revoke it in writing, effective immediately, with your signature and notarization. I can prepare the revocation document right now. We'd file it with the county recorder's office and send notice to any financial institutions where you have accounts. Do it, I said. While she prepared the paperwork, I called my bank, First Western Federal, where I've had accounts for 30 years, and asked to speak to the branch manager. A woman named Patricia answered. I told her I believed someone might attempt to make unauthorized changes to my accounts, and I wanted to flag them. She said she'd put a verbal hold and notation on my accounts and asked me to come in person when I could. I was in and out of Beverly's office by 3:15. I drove to the bank branch on Camelback Road and sat with a manager named Dennis for 40 minutes. By the time I left, my accounts had additional verification requirements. Nothing could be changed, transferred, or closed without me appearing in person with 2 forms of ID. I stopped at a hardware store on the way home. I bought a new deadbolt. I installed it myself. I was an electrician for 34 years, but I've always been handy, and a deadbolt is a deadbolt. 20 minutes, new locks, new keys, and 1 extra key that I mailed to Beverly's office from a post office box 3 blocks from my house. Then I put on a clean shirt, drove to Lyle and Sheila's house in Scottsdale, and sat down to an anniversary dinner for a marriage that Sheila had never once seemed to respect while Carol was alive. She'd made pot roast. Carol's pot roast, or her version of it. I recognized the spices, recognized the way it smelled. She must have gotten the recipe from Lyle, who must have gotten it from the recipe box Carol kept on the counter. That recipe box was one of the first things I'd noticed was missing from my kitchen about 6 weeks after Carol died. I hadn't wanted to cause a problem. I hadn't said anything. The kids were there, my grandchildren, 8 and 11, who watched tablets at the dinner table and barely looked up. I don't blame them. They barely know me. Sheila poured wine and talked about Carol in the past tense with an affection she'd never shown in present tense. Lyle mostly nodded and ate. His phone was on the table, which he never allows the kids to do. He checked it twice during dinner. Both times he glanced at Sheila and she gave him a very small nod. I ate the pot roast. I drank 1 glass of wine. I talked about Carol because Carol deserves to be talked about. After dessert, a store-bought pie, which Carol would have found hilarious, Sheila offered to show me some photos she'd dug up. Old ones from a box, she said. Family pictures. She'd had them in the living room. The living room was at the back of the house. Lyle said he had to step out to take a call. I said, "It's 8:30 on a Saturday night, Lyle." He said it was a client. He said it would just be a minute. I told him I'd come out with him. He looked at Sheila. That look. The kind of look that passes between 2 people who have had a conversation they thought only they were a part of. "I'll just be a second," he said. "Stay, have the pie." "I'm fine," I said. I could use the air. Outside, Lyle walked around to the side of the house, not toward the driveway where you'd go to get in a car, but toward the gate that opens onto the alley behind the property. He stood there with his phone and he made a call. I stood just around the corner of the garage and I listened. "She's got him looking at pictures," he said. "Yeah, go. Use the spare. There's a key on the hook inside the garage." A pause. "The gray lockbox. Yeah, we've maybe got 30 minutes if she can keep him going through the box." Another pause. "Just the safe. Don't touch anything else. I'll explain later." He hung up. I stood in the dark against the side of my son's house and I thought about Carol. I thought about the way she used to say, "Franklin, you see the best in people until you can't anymore. And that's a good quality, it really is. But sometimes you need to see what's there a little sooner." I'd always told her she was a worrier. I'd always told her Lyle was a good kid. Carol was right. Carol was always right. I went back inside. I sat down in the living room. I told Sheila the photos were wonderful. I pointed at pictures of myself and Carol and said things that were true. "That's us at the Grand Canyon, 1997. That's from her sister's wedding. That's the summer we drove to Maine, and the check engine light came on in Pittsburgh, and we ate at a diner while we waited for the tow truck and ordered pie, and Carol said it was the best pie she'd ever had, and I've never believed her, but I've also never stopped thinking about it." Sheila watched me, performing patience. 40 minutes later, Lyle came back inside. He said the call had gone long. He was sorry. I told him not to worry about it. I drove home. My house was lit up. I'd left 2 lights on when I left, the lamp in the entryway and the kitchen light above the sink. That's what I always do. It's what Carol always did before that. Now the lights in the back bedroom were on too. I parked on the street instead of the driveway. I sat in my truck for a moment. Then I called Beverly. She didn't answer, which made sense at 9 o'clock on a Saturday, but I left a voicemail. Then I called 911 and told them, There appeared to be someone inside my home who wasn't supposed to be there. The police arrived in 11 minutes. 2 officers, a man and a woman, both younger than my son. I met them at the curb and explained that I'd been away for the evening and I believed someone had entered without permission. The female officer asked if I had any idea who it might be. I said I had a suspicion, but I'd rather not speculate. They went to the door. I stayed on the lawn. There was a long moment. Then the front door opened, and a man I didn't recognize, mid-40s, tool bag, the particular look of someone who has been caught doing something they can't explain their way out of, was escorted out in handcuffs. He'd come in through the back window. My new deadbolt had stopped him at the front door. He'd broken the back window instead. He'd found my old safe, a floor safe in the guest bedroom closet that I'd emptied 2 weeks prior during a general reorganization I do every spring, and he'd spent the better part of an hour apparently trying to figure out why a safe would be bolted to the floor but not actually locked. The answer is that a safe with nothing in it doesn't need to be locked. The police officer asked me if I knew him. I said no. He gave a name, eventually. He had priors. Lyle's name came up in the investigation that followed over the next 2 weeks, during which Beverly filed civil and criminal referrals, and my son sat in a room with 2 detectives who asked him questions he'd thought he'd never have to answer. Lyle called me once from his attorney's phone and said he was sorry. He said Sheila had pushed him into it. He said they were desperate. He said he knew it was wrong. I told him I knew too. I told him I'd known since he made me coffee I hadn't asked for at 10 in the morning. He was quiet for a long time. He asked. I told him honestly that I didn't know, that it was in Beverly's hands in the DA's office, and that I hadn't decided yet what I was going to request in terms of charges. That part was true. I genuinely hadn't decided. What I had decided was this. I changed my will, not out of spite, not to punish anyone, but because Carol and I had built something over 41 years, and it took actual work, and the people who inherit it should be people who understand that something built over time doesn't belong to anyone, just because they waited long enough for you to die. I also found Carol's recipe box. It was in a cabinet in Sheila's kitchen, behind some pasta she'd never made. I took it home. I put it back on the counter where it belongs. Some things are not about money. Some things are not about locks or safes or powers of attorney or whatever legal mechanisms someone thinks will get them what they haven't earned. Some things are just about a woman who made pot roast on cold nights and kept recipes in a box and laughed too loud at her own jokes. That's the prize they never understood they were never going to get.